I'm going to play a short commercial by Big Pharma, and I'd like to discuss the ramifications of this commercial after showing it to you.
America's biopharmaceutical companies have one very important thing in common.
A common enemy.
We're making great progress because we're collaborating in ways that we've never done before.
In a matter of weeks, we've progressed from potential treatments
To antibodies and antivirals that have shown positive results.
To several promising vaccine candidates.
Because science
Science is how we get back to normal.
So that's Pharma. I'm going to go back just a moment and show you all the people who sponsored this commercial. It's quite a large number of people, of companies. There we go. See all those names? Look at that. It's amazing. Look at all these big pharma companies. All of them, around 30. They all supported this commercial and this message. So my question is, what's going on with you farmers? You saw Pharma. What about the farmers? Don't you think your products might help in the battle for the coronavirus? Isn't it possible that early stage of COVID-19 maybe could be fought with a combination of less expensive items such as an oxygen tent? Then in the oxygen tent, the person's laying on their stomach, which they've found apparently is better for breathing. Maybe they learn to move their arms back and forth throughout the day as a way to exercise and kind of keep everything so that they don't get fluids in their chest. You can build up of fluids in their chest. But what if we add some kind of fumes, like garlic fumes, into the oxygenated air, or raw onion fumes, or maybe jalapeno pepper? Just why don't we clinical trial this stuff? I mean, it's almost like it sounds too silly, but keep in mind, over the years, there have been clinical trial studies done. The beer companies did one a few years ago. Coffee did a clinical trial. I think Oat Brand did a clinical trial once. So it's the coronavirus. Let's do clinical trials to see if early stage COVID can be fought with naturally occurring food that we have available. It'd be a much less expensive treatment. Let's give everybody a choice. Let's not just focus on a vaccine or a drug. That's fine, but let's give the other side, homeopathic. What is it possible that the fumes from garlic or from raw onion, not in an oxygenated setting where the person's able to keep some mobility, isn't it possible early stage COVID that might fight it off or just weaken it? Giving the antibodies more time to then come in and fight the coronavirus? I mean, it may not be, but why are we only relying on Big Pharma for the solution? And why is the media focused only on Big Pharma? Why isn't the media encouraging clinical trials? So anyway, let's just move forward. If you're a farmer, if you're in agriculture, also even if you're in the exercise part of business. Again, movement, arms. I mean, don't you want to be part of these studies, these clinical trials to show that activity might even help fight the coronavirus? That if you're bedbound, that actually may make it harder to fight the coronavirus? So why doesn't the athletic industry, the farming industry, the oxygen tent industry, if there is one, why don't you all get together and do some clinical trials? I mean, just for sanity's sake, just to know. Let's not just assume that the only solution is in a lab making a vaccine or a drug. That's great that we have that option, that they're working their butts off and they're intelligent people. That's all great. But sometimes there are other ways to solve a problem or to give people other alternatives. And I think we're missing the boat right now. Let's do these clinical trials, as many as we can do. We should be doing clinical trials even on the masks for people who are symptomatic or who maybe have a mild case of coronavirus, but they're wearing a mask to not get anyone else infected. But what's happening? Breathing in and out their own exhale all day long. Are we going to ultimately find out that the key is exhaling? That the way you reduce overall deaths is by encouraging the exhaling of the coronavirus, getting it out of the body, And maybe when we do these oxygen tests, if somebody were to do them, oxygen tent with the fumes, people breathing in, moving the arms, what if we encourage people to exhale? And we maybe even had something off past the bed where they're laying down on their stomach that would suck in their exhale, and maybe a UV light comes on and just kills whatever they just exhaled. So we're exhaling out the bad, taking in the good. As a nurse pointed out, it reminded me, years ago, cartoons, in with the good air, out with the bad. It was like a thing. It's like in cartoons. So, I mean, let's just expand this. Let's be curious. Let's be adventurous. Let's just not wait around. So if you're a farmer, if you're in agriculture, if you're in the exercise industry, if you make oxygenated tents or could, get together. Do your own clinical trials. Don't be embarrassed. What if 20 years from now we find out that we could have offered alternatives and nobody just bothered to do it? Wouldn't that be worse? Nobody's going to laugh at you if you fall short. But what if it turns out in the early stages of COVID that you can fight it off easier in a natural homeopathic way, and then after a certain point you can't, and then you do need a drug, or you do need a ventilator, or you do need the science approach. Let's just not assume that the science approach is the only approach. Before science, people did something. They didn't just automatically let people die. If you watch old TV shows, the doctors seem to have their own remedies that seem to work some of the time, and they weren't based on Big Pharma back then. And another thing, where do you think Big Pharma gets their ideas from? They get it from naturally occurring plants and food and trees. They find things in nature that they think helps, and then they replicate it in the lab. So it actually starts from all the stuff that's naturally occurring. So why don't we try right now? Just if you're, like I said, just do the clinical trials, get together, look at all these names, they all contribute. Okay, they're all contributing in the farming industry. Can't you guys put a pool of money together and just do tests just to see? Can an oxygenated tent with some type of something added to the air that's naturally occurring, that is kind of known as a sickness fighter, which is like garlic, raw onions, peppers, jalapeno peppers, all those are kind of known as possibly being a way to kill the virus. So what if that was in the air along with the oxygen? You're moving your arms because you're on your stomach, which, by the way, they weren't doing originally. They had people on their back, and they discovered on their stomach actually might help the process, help them breathe better. So, and then if you're moving your arms back and forth, you're encouraging your chest motions and possibly even keeping fluid from building up. So let's just do the test. Let's just see what can happen. Don't put it, if you have money out there, offer it to the agriculture industry if they're hurting. Everybody's hurting because of this. So why don't we be curious? If we're not curious now, then when?